I'm Brent Leary.
I'm Paul Greenberg.
We are the CRM Players. It's CRM Players Weekly, and I'm wearing another different Ram shirt.
And I'm not.
Well, yeah. This is a tribute to my buddy Bob Fagel up in the Boston area. I'm wearing my St. Patrick's Rams shirt. Yeah, I know it's not March, but I don't care. It's clean, and I like it. So there it is.
I am wearing a black polo T-shirt. Here's my team, the New York Equestrians.
Yes, actually, I like the combination of the fatigue Ram hat and the the St. Patrick's, the Shamrock Rams.
You're combat ready for St. Patty's Day.
Yeah, so I got about 8 months to get ready for that.
That's one dirty shirt if you keep wearing it.
Anyway, so yeah, this is we got another great show ahead. We've got our buddy. This is good. Is he our first return guest for 2020?
Depends.
We don't include Esteban or any.
No,
Of
course not. I think wait, was Don Sherman on twice this year?
Well, we did the special Pega World one.
Yeah, but was he on another time before that this year? I know he's on last year a couple of times, right?
Yeah. Well, maybe. I don't know. I'm losing track. We've been sheltering in place for 2,000 straight weeks at this point. So it's like
devil. There's Digital Pestilence was
Camouflage Ramp. Now
yeah,
I've seen him. And our buddy Sven. All right, there he is. Ayo. Isn't that like who used to do it? Ayo? Was that
that was
Johnny Carson, Ed?
Yeah, it's Johnny Carson. No, it was Ed McMahon.
Ed McMahon and Johnny.
Ed McMahon would do it.
I don't know what all blacks. Oh no, you're not wearing black though. You're wearing dark blue or something.
I can't do that ritual dance those guys do there. That is so complicated. It's like I can't even stand on 2 feet, much less do that. Right
there, it is. And our guest for the day, he's in the green room. I like to call him Buffalo Bob Stutz now because that's wow. Remember that old show Buffalo Bill? That that was that.
No. Here's the thing. He may remember this. I certainly remember this. When I was a kid, there was this puppet named Howdy Doody that was really popular. And it was hugely popular. And of course, all the obvious jokes came when you're 5 years old. Bob may remember it, but the Howdy Doody's the host of the show was Buffalo Bob.
Oh,
you may be.
I think
a memory.
I like this Buffalo Bob better. Mainly because I don't know what the other Buffalo Bob is.
No, you honestly about a guy who hung around with a bunch of little kids and puppets.
That's not a good thing in the 2020s. No. So that was move past that one.
Innocent and actually incredibly lucrative for Buffalo Bob. Yeah, that's right. I am that old, Josh.
Okay, so before we bring Buffalo Bob on with us, we got some house cleaning and some little things that we want to talk about first. What do you want? We want to start with the what happened with the happy hour yesterday?
Yeah, once again, wildly happy. Everyone was happy, but really the highlight we did the introductions like we always do, and they're always fun because especially the guys who have done them a million times to each other, because we have a lot of repeats there. We actually now have 10 people in the 10 times club. That's Bob Fagel, Donnie Weinstein, and Thomas Wiebernet have been at least 10 times. Bob has the most with 13, at least 10 times on the happy hours, right? So they all have seen each other a lot. So actually, I find it kind of funny, but they're all coming out trying to come up with new stories to tell that they haven't told before. And sometimes they can't, and they're not sure what to say. So they keep it really short. But then there's new people on who then don't really know who the hell they are, right? So it's really this hilarious conundrum. But the highlight was, of course, the question that you asked.
Yeah, and it's kind of a perfect timing to go into that because, literally an hour ago, not even been an hour, article came out talking about from Tech Target, and Sean, want to make sure I get his last Sutner. So he had this whole article about virtual conferences and kind of the good, the bad, the ugly, and he asked me for kind of my opinion on some of that stuff, and it's included in there. But that was what I ended up asking the folks on the happy hour, just to get their take. We're halfway through the season, the year. There's been a number of virtual events. Some of them, started out as live events and had to switch over to virtual events. There's been a ton of them. And so we just wanted to ask the folks on the happy hour, what was your take on these? How have they been for you? Give us the good, the bad, the ugly. And so that was like a full 23-minute conversation that broke out from that. And we was just recently, we put a little clip, about a 4 or 5 minute clip, maybe it's a 6-minute clip, kind of condensed some of it. And if you want to see the full discussion, we were able to get their permission. We definitely don't want to, side swipe somebody. So they all gave us the permission to post this. So you can go on to, you could go on my profile, or if you're watching from LinkedIn, you can see, right beneath this live stream, you should see that little clip, and there is a link to our YouTube page, so you can see the full conversation. But for the show right here, I picked out what I think was probably the best suggestion from that whole discussion. It came from our buddy, we haven't seen him a lot, Jazzy Jim.
No, that's Jim Berkowitz, one of the earliest CRM influencers ever. Really, he was there in the early days of the industry. One of the people who influenced me back in the day, and he's stepped more or less away from that into startups and working with startups now. But he was instrumental in helping to actually make the CRM industry an actual industry.
He had one of the first blogs, if not the first blogs. And what did he say? The way that he uploaded his blog was through
FTP.
FTP. So yeah, he's been around a long time if that's the way you're uploading your blog.
Howdy doody.
All right, but let's go to what his suggestion when I asked about how do you kind of jazz up webinars. So it's not just about the virtual conferences. What can you do to make your webinars, a little bit more exciting and fun? Here's what he said. So let me go to here and here, and here we go.
You guys remember Mystery Science 2000? I think that's what it is. Well, was there a 2000 first? I mean, they had several iterations. But they had a robot, they had a guy, and what was the third thing? And so basically what they were doing was showing you a really bad movie. And the three of them you'd see their back of their heads as they're watching the movie.
Awesome.
Criticize, just like cracking jokes and criticizing the movie. And it was hugely entertaining. I thought, they're getting me to watch a ridiculously bad movie. It's funny, but just the whole experience, there's something about the way it was presented and the experience of it was captivating. And maybe what we need is we're sitting there and you get if you're going to do PowerPoints or something, you have it up there, you have people looking at it and cracking jokes and, making it more entertaining.
I think we hire CRM Playaz to basically do at the bottom.
Yeah, we'll put that on the rate sheet right after we get done. Okay. I like that suggestion. What do you think? Is that a good suggestion?
I like it for the rate sheet part.
I think yeah, let's get some hecklers in on the webinar and get some commentary going. What could go wrong with that?
It was pretty awesome.
I thought it was a great, we'll put it on our rate sheet if you want us to come and heckle your webinar.
That's officially.
We'll give you a cut rate for that one. So.
Yeah. Pay you for it.
Yeah. Otherwise, check out the video, because there was a great discussion, a lot of great ideas and feedback, and some concerns. So good stuff.
And by the way, read the article too. It's actually a very good article on.
Yeah, that article on. We'll put the link up on the profile page too. Yeah. So it looks like Josh wants to get in on the heckling too. By the way.
Hey, Josh. You're in. We'll talk about that when you're on, which is next week, I believe, right?
Oh, is he next week? Okay, cool.
Yeah, Jess is on. Jess is our analyst of the week, right? Analyst of the month, actually. First one kicking off the series of bringing on analysts regularly. Brent and I are long past the idea we consider ourselves analysts anymore.
We need other folks to to give us some interesting material to talk about.
I literally don't consider myself that smart anymore. I used to be. I was young. Back when I understood Howdy Doody.
Yeah. All right. So a couple other announcements, right?
Yeah.
So we need to give a real good shout out to Pega for being the very first folks to submit for the Battle of the Bands.
Now, keep in mind, we have 6 companies who have verbally committed. All right. So I'm going to name their names just so that they minimally will be shamed into submitting their registration to otherwise. So Pega was actually, if I correct, the very first to submit. I mean, very first to commit and now have submitted. Second, we have Episerver. Third, Oracle. Fourth, Freshworks. Alan, I know you're here. I see your comments. Fifth, exactly. And who am I leaving out?
You get Zoho?
Zoho. Yes, at Zoho, 6th. And I know Sandy was extremely excited about this, so I'm expecting to see their actual registration form 2nd.
If she's that excited, not only do you expect to see that 2nd, I expect to see Sandy playing in the band, playing her piano in the band. That's what I expect.
You know what, Brent? As judges, we have to be neutral, and we have to leave that to them to decide.
Sure. Okay.
We certainly would play that. And
anyway,
we did get one inquiry, and the only thing I will tell you is that it's not Salesforce per se, but it is Salesforce. It's a Salesforce-related organization. That's the only way I'm going to put it. We have one inquiry, and we're hoping that they join, which would give us 7 bands, which will be enough to start the competition even on their own, if that's all we get. However, we do expect, since the registration period is just open, that we should get another at least 8. We would like to have 15 bands. And invitations will be going out to companies like ServiceNow and SAP and Microsoft and Salesforce itself, et cetera, et cetera.
That's a lot of et cetera. All right. One more thing I wanted to talk about.
Disrupt.
Yeah, because we mentioned this, we kind of teased this, was it a month ago or something like that? This idea of the crossover between 2 shows. Back in the day, my example is always Law and Order and Homicide: Life on the Street. I love both of those shows because you love Lenny Briscoe and you love Munch and all those guys. And so it was always a special treat when they did the crossover episodes where you saw like Munch and Frank Pemberton on Law and Order, and then you saw Lenny Briscoe and McCoy from Law and Order on Homicide: Life on the Street. It's always a highlight. You see them back to back. So we decided we wanted to do that too, right?
Oh yeah. I mean, I have to say my reference point, as much as I did love the Law and Order crossovers, and I did, it's just proof that I'm considerably more infantile than you are. I actually really liked it because of the DC comic crossovers that are being done, that have actually been done up to this year with Flash and Green Arrow and Batwoman and Supergirl and the Legends of Tomorrow. And they did all that though in like a week, right? It was basically each show was a crossover episode with the other 4. And so they were able to have a continuous series in a single week, 5 in a row of all the shows, starting with the first and running to the last show in sequence. And they were, to be honest, brilliant. They were absolutely brilliant in the way they did them. And that got us very excited too. I mean, it got me excited. Brent, Lenny, and McCoy.
Yeah.
So
all right. So besides Buffalo Bob, seems to have also got you pretty excited, but we'll
get him on in.
So, so what we thought about who would be a great crossover for us, CRM Playaz, and luckily for us, literally, we're on Thursdays. Disrupt TV folks are on Fridays. So we are going to invite Ray Wong and Vala Afshar from Disrupt TV on with us in 2 weeks. 2 weeks from today.
That's right. August.
They'll be joining us August 6th, something like that.
Yeah.
All right. So the Disrupt TV guys will be joining us on 2 weeks from today. And 2 weeks from tomorrow, we will be joining the Disrupt TV guys.
Now, just to allay, I know all your absolute terror that there might not be an excuse the intrusion that day. There will be. We're at different times. I know that when you heard that, you're going,
oh no,
no excuse the intrusion. That would be awful. Right.
Well, and from a technical standpoint, Disrupt TV is not part of the BBC. It's not part of the Brent Broadcasting Channel. So you will not be able to see Disrupt TV on my LinkedIn live stream. So that's another reason why this is not a part, and it has no effect on what we do with Excuse the Intrusion.
That's right. So
didn't want to get you guys all in an uproar or anything like that. So.
Rest assured, we've got your back.
We've got your back. If you can take looking at us for another couple of, feel free.
That's right.
All right. So I think we got all our house cleaning out the way.
Yeah. Well, housekeeping. House cleaning, we got a long way to go.
Yeah, you haven't seen my house.
That's right.
Have a very long way to go if that's the case. But anyway, I think it's time for us to welcome Buffalo Bob Stutz is in the house. How you doing?
Good. How are you guys?
But wait, you're not what? Are you wearing a Hawaiian shirt today?
No, it's a Robert Graham shirt. There's a big difference.
I have no idea what it is.
If it ain't a Ram shirt, I have no clue. So
okay, so let's start with a very important question. What's the difference?
Robert Graham is high fashion.
Oh, got it. Got it.
I dressed up just for you guys.
It goes really well with your headset.
And if you're not doing Garanimals, you've already surpassed us. So we have no idea.
I thought this was high fashion. It's a Ralph Lauren.
For me, this is like black suit and tie for me. But
and you guys inspired me. I went out and bought a microphone and all the,
I noticed got lighting and microphone.
Lighting and microphone, the whole bit, right?
The sound is actually good. It really is.
See, now what you need to do is let Esteban know that he needs to do that too.
Right. He definitely has some bandwidth.
Like that, that's like, it's a long story, but that's like trying to teach a child something when they don't want to learn, right?
But by the way, when you see that comment, Bob, from LinkedIn user, that is Esteban.
That's Esteban, yeah. He still hasn't figured out how to get his name on here. I don't understand that. He's one of the smartest people you know, and he can't get his name on the LinkedIn profile thing.
Sven managed them, and he's that's exactly it. So, Mr.
Whoa.
No, listen. I actually want to take this show a little differently than we normally do. Because, we talk every time you're on, we talk about like SAP and this and that. But you're a pioneer, man. Like remember, I think last time I called you the godfather of CRM tech, right? And you are. And you have like a lot of history in this industry, and you have a lot of stories, and you weren't actually born into the industry. You were actually born before the industry started. So you did other things on the way there. So I think people need to hear about you, man. I do. You got a hell of a story to tell, and you're a good storyteller. So I love for everyone to hear it, really. It's time to get past talking about the companies you work for, right? You've worked for pretty much all of them anyway. So
pretty much.
Right. So
over the years.
Tell your story and tell the story of the industry as you see it from pretty much close to birth.
Yeah, I mean, I got into this industry by accident, right?
How's that?
I was in the military for 22 years. Got out. Before I got out, I had a small little accident, wasn't able to be deployed anymore. While I was trying to figure out whether the military was going to let me stay and finish 30 or whether I was going to have to leave, I ended up going to work on this project jointly with the U.S. Military Academy, Duke University, on the concept of a talking head, which was to teach foreign language using a 3D talking head. This was probably before you guys were born. Not you, Paul, but probably before Brett was born. You know,
I'm older than you think. I've been around a bit.
And it sort of got me into the tech space. And when I finally retired, I went to work right away into the tech space, into Sybase, and doing database engineering. And the rest was history. I left Sybase.
Well, wait for a minute. How did you get to know database engineering, given that you were in the military and talking about a talking head, not database engineering? How did you figure that out?
I taught myself.
Seriously.
Wow. Yeah. So, I mean, my bachelor's was in Eastern European Studies with but while I was doing, it took me 10 years to do my bachelor's because I was deployed all the time.
Wow.
But I had taken courses on Fortran and Pascal and, all that wonderful stuff, right, that nobody uses anymore, COBOL, right? Never used any of it, right? But then when this thing happened and all of a sudden I found myself like hanging around with nothing to do, I ended up on this project, which was pretty cool because I spent a lot of time at Duke University with the humanities department working on, because, I spoke quite a few languages. That was one of the things that I had over the years that, in part of the military. And so, yeah, that's how I ended up. I actually, it was by chance. I had some friends who introduced me and, next thing I knew, I was director of engineering at Sybase.
Wow.
Didn't know a fucking thing about databases. Sorry, probably shouldn't say that like that.
We're not that.
Hey, we're not on the FCC. So.
I guarantee. Yes, can't censor it, so don't worry.
So I had to, I taught myself, right? And then things just worked out really well, and left there and went to a startup, which was a startup called Intrepid Systems, which we ended up selling to Peoplesoft.
Ah, wait, what did the startup do?
It was end-to-end retail.
Oh, so you were Peoplesoft Retail, basically?
Yeah, so Peoplesoft acquired Intrepid Systems, which became Peoplesoft Retail.
That was a good product. Actually.
Yeah, it was actually.
Yeah, I remember that product. I used to deal with people. Peoplesoft, of course, was my first tech company I ever dealt with, and retail was their one. Retail, and they had just acquired Red Pepper for manufacturing. Not too long after that, were like their shining stars of like the new era for Dave Duffield.
Yeah, and then I didn't want to go to work for Peoplesoft because I thought it was too soft of a culture.
Now you appreciate it, though, of course.
Look, it really was a very different culture, right? It was a culture of collaboration. I wasn't used to that. That wasn't. And in those early days, that wasn't in my DNA,
I used to love that culture, though, I have to say.
Yeah, no, I look at it. For some people, it's really good. For me, it was, I like to make decisions, do it fast, do it quick, and move on. And, so fortunately, I got a call from David Schmeier and Tom Siebel and ended up at Siebel to build all the industries.
Wow, remember that. When you were doing that, when you started building industries, how did you figure out what industries you wanted to build first? I mean, you're not going to go all at once. So what was first, and what was the decision that got you to that?
Yeah, it's really simple. I had one person who understood telco really good. That was how we ended up, actually, we had acquired at Siebel, we had acquired a company right as I was joining that was based out of the East Bay. And they actually had a lightweight telco product. And so that really became, the basis for really telco. And then we built insurance, life sciences, banking, right? I mean, the whole gamut, right? I used to do 45 releases a year.
45.
Yeah.
That's what you meant by get it, get it done and get it done.
And the culture there was one, it was a pretty hard culture, right? It was 24/7. It was,
Tom Siebel's.
Yeah, it was. But I have to say, I loved every minute of it, and and then I ended up running all the application engineering at Siebel, and and it was a good company. Actually, when I got a little burned out, they allowed me to sort of take some time off, and I went and did a startup in Austin, Texas, called Hire.com, which then was sold, and I went back to Siebel. After playing around for about 6-7 months, went back to Siebel, and then spent quite a few more years there. And then right before the acquisition by Oracle, Shai Agassi had called me up and asked me to come to SAP to run all the application engineering and strategy. And so that's how I ended up at SAP the first time.
So when you were there, I remember, it's funny, I didn't know you well then, but I do remember you, and this is why. I remember, look, for years, SAP's CRM was basically not really SAP anything. It was just like something that they claimed they had and stuck on, and at best, assuming it was actually a physical product, which I'm still don't think there was, it sat on a shelf, so to speak. Then one day, and I still remember, it was October 2007, I see this product called SAP CRM 2007, and it's got this sort of Google-like interface, and it's seriously kind of cool, and with all the capabilities that CRM needed to have, it had. And I wrote a piece on it on my prior blog before ZDNet about how, wow, SAP finally has CRM. Later found out that was you who built that. And now, so my question is, I mean, one of the things that characterized that particular release was it really was well aligned with what user interfaces kind of needed to be back then, which was not a hallmark of SAP. Let's put it that way. That's the last thing they seemed to ever concern themselves with. They didn't care if the user interface was from 1983 and R1, whatever. How did you even, given you were in a culture that was, or a company rather, that was somewhat antithetical to aligning yourself with current market needs, how'd you manage to A, figure that out, and B, get it through?
So, it was the beginning in 2006 was sort of the beginning of the Web 2.0 era, right? And so I just decided one day with some pretty smart architects that we were going to build a Web 2.0 interface for a CRM system. And actually we had to put a huge wrapper around this thing and sort of plug on this Web 2.0 interface, which was pretty cool, actually. It was, I'll be honest, I mean, it was not an easy time for me, going against the grain and, but anybody that knows me knows that that's what I've done my whole career. And it turned out to be a huge success. And CRM 7 was, I think, probably very, very close to, I wouldn't say, look, I'll be honest, there's never been a better CRM system than Siebel.
Wow.
And I can say that with a clear conscience. When it comes to depth of functionality and breadth of functionality, there has never been a product that has ever even come close to what Siebel was. And that's why even today you have so many companies still using Siebel. telco, banks, right? You go down the list, call centers, right? I mean, look, it withstood the test of time, right? And the functionality to this day has really never been replicated. And at SAP, we took a different approach, which was, really focus on usability, focus on the UI, also the integration into ERP, which, actually is a huge advantage at the end of the day, right? And
can I ask you a question about that? Because that's a really profound statement. Something that you built pretty long ago, and you still have that feeling for it. Why do you think nothing has come along that can match that?
Because it wasn't easy. And in the cloud, there is some differences between building on-prem software and cloud-based software. And back in those days, I mean, Siebel was, and still even today, if you look at complex order management and the ability to do complex order management with, front office pricing, billing, configuration, right? I mean, there's never been, a product that has been able to do that, right? I mean, look, don't get me wrong. Like, Microsoft CRM for service is very good. Salesforce CRM for service is very good. Even the SAP C4C service is very good. But the reality is there's never been another product like it. And I truly do believe that. And, now, there's other things that have happened in the industry since then, right? One was Salesforce building this amazing platform that they have, right? Which sort of changed the game of CRM, right? Because it went from a business of applications to it's transforming very rapidly into a business of sort of a headless platform, right? And I think that's a good thing, actually, at the end of the day, because I think it will allow for much deeper functionality to be built than what I've seen in a CRM system. I mean, look, to be perfectly honest, I except for Pega, who I think has built some really deep stuff, especially around workflow, and I see Ray's on, and I know Ray started that years ago, but outside of Pega, a lot of the CRM systems, look, they're good. They do what they're designed to do, but they just don't have that really heavy depth and breadth of functionality that Siebel had. If you look at all the industries, right, they dominated telco, life science, banking, right? I mean, and not just what I call corporate banking, but the ability to do retail banking, right? It had a teller system. It had, right? I mean, the depth was pretty big, right? It was a, and yes, I still very much, think it's still not to take away from any of the other systems out there, because they're all very good at what they do. And, but I just think that, the people went to building lightweight, like Salesforce, for instance. Salesforce really excelled because they built a lightweight, beautiful UI back in those days. Man, Siebel UI was ugly. There's no doubt about it, right?
I had to use your Siebel scale.
It was, to this day, I still hate list form paradigms. They drive me crazy every time I see one, But, Salesforce came along with this, lightweight product, beautiful UI, and the makings of this platform, which has evolved over the years, right? And there's a lot to be said about that platform, right? App Exchange is an amazing thing, right? And then Microsoft, late entry into the CRM space, and I had a great team at Microsoft that, basically had been with me at Siebel and been with me at SAP, and then they moved to Salesforce with me, and Microsoft built CRM in a very different way, right? We took a different approach there, which was really doing, very tight integration into Office and other things, and really, and there also UX was really important, right? Building a highly interactive UX. We built the first true task-based UX in existence, right? And and that UX actually set a spark in the industry, because very shortly after that, Salesforce's UX changed dramatically, like Microsoft's UX. And I do think it is about usability at the end of the day. But Microsoft, look, we took a very different approach, but the industry has changed a lot. The people have changed. There's like Ray, I've known forever, Ray Gerber, him going back, before he went to Pega. We used to compete years ago when Ray was at this company that specialized in financial services, sort of CRM type functionality. Thomas Wiebernot's on there. Thomas used to work for me years ago at SAP. And look, the industry has been sort of up, down, up, down. There's been good things, bad things. CRM had a lot of bad, connotation for a lot of years. We went from, CRM to customer engagement to, I don't even know what it's called nowadays. I hear it so many different things, right? But the reality is, in the industry, the one thing that nobody has been able to do is tie the front and the back end together in a seamless way. Most CRM systems are still an island at the end of the day. They're islands that you have to, build lots of bridges to make them work. They don't just plug in and work. And one of the things that we're really focusing on nowadays at SAP, which is really something I started 13, 14 years ago, and it was, the cloud wasn't quite there yet, but if you can imagine, Thomas actually knows this, I built the first actual cloud-based CRM for SAP back in 2005. And then it didn't last because nobody believed in the cloud, except for Salesforce was the only ones that really believed in the cloud. And, I think, the way I look at it now is like CRM has to change. It's not about front office anymore, right? I've always been a big believer in processes. And I do believe that tying front-end processes and back-end processes together in a seamless way, where a user shouldn't even know that there's a front and a back, right? The three-letter acronyms have to go away.
Good luck on that. That's a much bigger fight than what you're talking about.
Yeah, believe me, I know it's always been a big fight, right? But
that's going to be harder to go away than the Washington football teams.
Yeah, that's true, actually.
That's right.
But it's time to revamp, rethink about the industry and think about CRM. I have some pretty radical thoughts on the software industry. I basically think software industry is pretty evil industry at the end of the day, right? I love it. I've been in it, but there are some inherent faults with it at the end of the day.
Has it gotten any less evil as time gone on, or has it gotten even worse as time gone on?
That's a hard one. I think it's still pretty much the same. I have become a firm believer, and I do want to preface that all these remarks are my own, and
Hey,
And
we can give you the disclaimer that we've got for Esteban if you want us to break that.
That's right.
they are truly my own, and anybody knows that, right? Look, I talk about the industry all the time, and look, I never badmouth anybody's products because I actually believe that every product out there has its good and bad at the end of the day. And I really love, I'm just a fan of different products, right? I love Zoho. I love Freshworks. I not such a fan of Zendesk, but I am, there are some really good ones out there, and I really like, just looking at these products and looking at what people are doing, right? I'm still a huge Sugar CRM fan, I remember when those guys first started and it was freeware, and I used to show it to my engineers at Siebel and say, look what these guys can do. Why can't you freaking do that? Right.
You remember, and we had 30,000 developers working on it because of the Sugar Forge.
That's right. It was, it was basically, freeware that people could add to. It was community-based software back in those days, right? Yeah, it was good stuff. But I still believe that like the real power is connecting the front and back together, and that's one of the reasons I decided to come back to SAP, was because it's sort of like unfinished business for me. And plus I moved back to Germany, which and I would say I'm missing sports, but I'm not missing sports. So it's
baseball starts today.
Yeah, well, I'm not. I am a Yankees fan, but I'm not baseball's not my favorite sport at the end.
Yeah, well,
it's football, isn't it?
It's hockey.
Oh, it's hockey. Okay.
Yeah.
Sabres, huh?
It's the Sabres. Yeah.
Oh, fair. I mean, you grew up there, so
aren't they getting ready to start up too?
I'm not sure hockey will,
they're coming back with a 24 team sort of peculiar version of a playoff, but it is coming back.
I don't have a whole lot of time to follow sports anyways, because I actually have a real job building software every day.
Ouch.
That doesn't feel good. Let him think what he likes, You have to sort of be nice.
So, I mean, are you surprised at all, or to be where we are in 2020 with the state of, like the industry? Is this shocking, or are you surprised we're not as farther along as maybe we should be at this point?
I'm actually surprised we're not farther along. And let me tell you why. If I look at the CRM space in general, there's not a whole lot of new CRM players, right?
Other than us.
Thank goodness for that.
Yeah, thank goodness for that. Well, I wish there were, because the reason I say that is because a lot of the systems, look, whether it's Microsoft, whether it's Salesforce, SAP, it doesn't matter. Zoho, right? You look at all of them. Look, they're all legacy systems nowadays, right? They're all pretty old, right? You look at the HubSpots of the world, right? I mean, look, these things have matured, right? And when I think about technology today, and I think about how far technology has come, and then I look at these applications, and I really wonder, right? What's happening is everybody's trying to take new technology and force feed it into these old legacy systems, right? Instead of trying to reimagine, right, in a new world, right? What does CRM look like in this new world of automation and machine learning and voice? And why is there no CRM system that has started new that builds from that very premise versus, you know, all the systems out there are still old legacy systems, right? You know, it's typically from the database layer up, you know, it's never from the user perspective, right? I mean, you know, I always tell people like CRM systems were designed for control. They weren't designed to help people do their job. They were really designed for control. As much as I would like to sit here and say that they were really designed for really being, you know, yeah, we're legacy too. That's true. I'm really legacy. I'm going to be 64 here in 2 months, right? You know,
come on, child.
You know,
I'm 70 years, baby.
I know, but you know, it's true though. You know, I don't understand why somebody hasn't started a new company and thinking about CRM in a radically different way, right? Look, machine learning. You look at the companies out there. What have they done? They took machine learning and forced it into these legacy applications, right? And look, it's okay. It solves some problems, but just imagine if you reimagined even something like SFA, right? Simple SFA scenarios where everything's automated, everything's pushed, nothing is pulled, right? You know, where the user becomes smart because the technology and that ability to use machine learning to help that salesperson to be even smarter and better at what they do. If a system actually worked like that, right? But the reality is they don't work like that.
So last week, interestingly enough, a guy you know, we had Scott McCorkle on with his new company, right? It was called MetaCX. And
I've seen it.
Yeah, well, but the concept is really interesting. It's because it's one of the first, I mean, so the basic concept is you start at the beginning with collaboration between the customer and the company to figure out what the customer outcomes need to be. Then you align the company accordingly. And again, this is the technology to enable this. And then you measure against the success of whether or not you've been able to actually help the customer achieve the outcomes, which is, I've never heard of a company that even thought about that, much less did it, which is fascinating to me.
Yeah, there's, I mean, look, there are other systems out there that sort of do that type of stuff, you know, but it's still not, you know, the problem is it doesn't solve the basic problems that companies need to solve, right? I still come back to, you know, CRM, it's really simple. It's about acquiring new customers, retaining the ones you have, and growing that share of wallet.
I had a short term that basically boiled CRM down to find, catch, and keep customers, but I couldn't be FC and that just doesn't work as a good analogy. You don't want to FCK your customer. You know, it just doesn't really.
Yeah, that's not a good one.
But how come like the basics of how come user adoption is still so low? Because they aren't tackling some of the basics like you're talking about of making it easy for folks to get data in and get data out. Why are we not there yet?
Okay, look, I'll probably take a lot of flack for saying this, but there isn't a decent fucking UX in this industry. I'm sorry, but they are still the way the UXs work, and I don't care who it is, they're just not dynamic in nature, right? And until we get to a point where we're able to build applications that have dynamic UIs based on the type of data that you're bringing in, structured, unstructured, the combination of that all together, right? And building it in a dynamic UI that is usable, that, you know, you fall in love with, that you have an emotion over with at the end of the day. Until that happens, I mean, that's why, you know, I always say, like, look, even as good as some of these systems are, people don't like using them, right? And it's because of the fact that they're just not, and some of them, look, are really good, but the UX is still not very intuitive, right? The UXs are still, yeah.
That.
I guys, at least you only have to put up with him once in a while. I have to put up with him every day, okay? Do you know how high maintenance he is?
Oh, this is making the highlight reel, by the way.
But look, it's true though. There are no UXs out there that you would say, "Oh, I'm in love. I want to use this every day." Right? I mean, I use applications every day for different things in my personal life, right? And I have found some that just are amazing, right? The intuitive, smarts, right? And I always wonder, like, why can't we build enterprise applications like that, right? Why can we not build UXs that actually people want to use, right? Look, I was, people always say, like, Google has a really good UX paradigm. I'm not such a huge fan of.
Right with you on that one.
I think some of their stuff is okay, but I'm not a huge fan of some of their stuff, right? But I do think, if we could find a way to build UXs that were dynamic in nature, right? That were where somebody didn't have to pull data, but it was pushed to them automatically. If you think about technology today, when I'm on a phone, there's no reason why I should ever have to search for a single bit of data in a CRM system, right? Everything should be automatically pushed to me. Companies talk about it, right? You see all these beautiful demos that companies show, but show me a single rep who actually is using that shit, because there is nobody using it, right? And it's really because you're forcing this new technology into these legacy systems, and it's just hard at the end of the day, right?
Oh, you're gonna fix all that at SAP? Is that the deal?
I'm trying. Esteban slows me down, though. It's like having that wayward kid that you constantly have to, like.
He keeps going that way.
But
one thing.
Go ahead.
Oh, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I was saying, one of the things that I thought was kind of emerging as one of those, interfaces that people would be able to naturally gravitate to and love and use was voice. And it seemed like it has lost all of that momentum that it seemed to have not even that long ago. And is it because, as someone told me at a vendor, I'm not going to say who it was, but it's just because it's extremely hard to get voice right? Is that the big holdup here for that?
I would say, look, over the years, I've done a lot of experiments with voice, and it's not easy. Let's just put it that way. You do have issues around GDPR compliance with voice. I think the biggest, if I look at all the voice stuff that's out there today, I mean, my favorite is actually Google Assistant. I actually think the Google Assistant and Google's voice service is actually very good. I think it's one of the better ones out there. But it still has a lot to be desired at the end of the day. It's just not rich enough, robust enough. There's a lot of training that has to take place. There's still a lot of, unless you build an application from the very beginning with voice, it's really difficult, right? And, there are some out there that have come a long way. I mean, look at Alexa, look what Amazon's done, right? Look what, Google has done with their version of Alexa, right? I mean, but that's a lot of work, right? It's a lot of effort to train, to really get those things. And now you think about having to do that in an enterprise environment. That is a really critical. That's a whole nother problem at the end of the day, right?
The enterprise environment is the contextual piece that you need if you go at an industry, because Google's not going to do that part for you. You have to do that part yourself.
Yeah, and it is very. And Thomas made a comment. It's too slow. It's true. The voice, in order for it to really be effective, it almost has to be instantaneous, and it's not. It's very slow, very, and sometimes, I know, like I have huge problems sometimes because my voice changes pretty often, it's from freaking bad sinus problems,
It'll get them after your bar mitzvah, I promise.
or if he's watching the Sabres and they're having not that great a game or something, is that affect
it'll all change when Paul and I go to the Maldives for a while.
There it is.
I feel so left out of that. I don't know what you guys are talking about.
But you did that last week. Like,
I know, just like, what the heck is he talking about here?
We'll tell you at the very end of the show.
Yeah, when it's time for my bar mitzvah, is that when you're going to tell me?
Not a bar mitzvah present. That should be cash.
So the industry, I think, is just, I think in some ways the industry is a little lost right now. I think every one of the companies in the CRM space is struggling. Yes, they're making money. Yes, they're growing. But look, if I look at them and I say, okay, what really is new that came out, right? And there's not a whole lot of new stuff coming out at the end of the day, right? I see a lot of cool hype demos, but I don't see a lot of stuff that you could say is in mass production at a customer being used, right? Even with machine learning, to be perfectly honest, right? I mean, I just don't think the adoption has been as great as the hype is around it at the end of the day. And I think that's really because it's just hard when you have a lot of legacy to try and hook that stuff in and actually make it work effectively. But that's my opinion. I'm sure that
on the UX side that you were talking about earlier, I was thinking years ago, when Lithium was actually a company with some promise, as opposed to what Vista did by gutting it and turning it into whatever they're calling Koros nowadays. Lithium, one of the powers of Lithium's success was that Lyle Fong, the original founder, recognized he was a gamer's gamer. I mean, he literally was like, people who know the gaming industry will appreciate this. He and his brother actually won John Carmack's Porsche in a gaming battle, which John Carmack is like the godfather of gaming, right? And anyway, Lyle recognized that, you know what? Not only do I have to build this community platform, but I got to make it fun for people to use. So he literally said, I'll use a gamer's interface because that'll do it. A gamer's UI, a gamer's UX, right? That will people love gaming and they love UI, UX of gaming. They really do. And even to this day, as much as game VC and video gaming is a massive industry, there's still no real anymore other than Lyle doing that then, which was one of the main reasons for Lithium's early success. Because they were always kind of enterprise ready as a technology, just not as a company. That lesson was never learned. And if you think about it, it's still a good lesson. I mean, those interfaces, if you want to pick an example of great interfaces, not everyone, obviously, but you can get a good handful, let's say solid number of handfuls of games that have beautiful interfaces that people love working with and make it easy to do something, and you hit a keystroke and the whole thing, 10 things happen, and yet you still enjoy the whole process while it's going on. No one's adopted the lesson, right? No one's adopted the damn lesson.
You're right. And it's not that people haven't tried, right? The whole gamification concept in an enterprise app, but Let me tell you why it failed and why no one's ever done it. It's really because of the fact that from a consumer basis, you can get away with that. But in an enterprise, the rules are very different. Look, companies don't want these nice, beautiful, my lesson learned in building the first really, the call center framework in Siebel. Beautiful, all these great views, all this, right? Then you go and see what a call center has actually done with it, right? So the 125 beautiful views that you built are stripped down to one, and everything is so simplified so that, there's no room to make an error, right? And I think that's part of the problem, right? Is that trying to get that sort of consumer type of UX into the enterprise. Businesses, a lot of them just don't want it at the end of the day. It doesn't sell, and look at some of the companies who were in that space trying to do that, like Badgerville, right? Remember those guys?
Yeah, Badgerville. Yeah. But they, I don't think the gamification companies actually got it at all. I literally think it's the game companies that get it, not the gamification ones.
It's the gamers.
The actual gamers themselves, right? You find guys, like I was talking to a guy today who's built an engagement product, which is very interesting. I'm going to get a deeper look at it next week. I won't mention it now, but I want to get to look first. But he came from the gamers world. He actually produced, speaking of which, all the CSI games back in the day. He actually is the producer of those games, right? He produced a number of major hits and PS2 hits. That was his universe. He was a video game producer. So he thought through things. He thinks through engagement from the standpoint of not just interaction, but from standpoint of visual engagement with the senses, right? And so he's building out based on a lot of gaming mechanics, and at the same time, the sort of the studies out there and the actual work he's done on the behaviors and the senses and the use of the senses. He's building all what he's doing with that kind of embedded in. Now, to that, I haven't seen it other than some, slides. Next week, I'm going to get a demo, but that's the kind of thinking I'm talking about.
Yeah, no, I think that's pretty cool. If you can take that type of a concept and move it into the enterprise, right? Then, that's an interesting thing. The question is, then you have the buyers who buy the stuff at the end of the day, right? And it is look, it's a fickle buying world in the enterprise software space, right? I always look, I get in trouble all the time because I say things I probably shouldn't say, but
you know what? You said,
don't worry, you'll never get in trouble with us. I mean,
right. And right now you said so many things you shouldn't say. You just might as well go off.
But look, I feel bad for customers sometimes, right? Because, and let me explain. Sometimes customers think the solution to solving their problem in the CRM space is buy a new CRM system.
Right.
And the reality is it has nothing to do with buying a new CRM system, because you know what? All of the systems out there, the processes are all the same. They maybe have a little different click streams here and there and a little different UI. But the reality is customers, I think a lot of them don't think it through very well. And I think they just think right away they need to buy a new system versus really wondering, how do I get the one I currently have to actually work and do the things that I need it to do, right? And I think, that's part of the thing with the software industry that I think is just evil. Because I think a lot of buying decisions are made on, high pressured sales, not really looking at the merits or even exploring. Like I always try to tell customers, look, before you start looking for something new, have you really even looked at what what you already invested, $40 million in? Do you not think like you should like at least try to make it work before you just dump it and go buy another system? Look, I can tell you over the years, how many customers that I started with them with Siebel, then moved them to SAP, then moved them to Microsoft.
Took your babies with you.
It pains me with these customers sometimes, right? Because I just think that, in the enterprise, there's such a waste of money on software sometimes that, people, I think they think that the answer to the problems they have is buy a new system. And it's not true, actually. The answer is really about, and I say this really around some businesses where it's not the CRM system. And I have said this for years, actually decades. Technology is not going to help you run your business better at the end of the day. Hiring good people will help you run your business a lot better than any technical software program, right? And I think the problem is that people just get hung up on buying software instead of re-examining. Like, my big thing is with call centers, right? Because I spent a lot of time over the years, helping customers put in these massive, large call centers, right? And it was always like, okay, you're spending all this money, but the reality is your problem is not the software that you had. The problem was the fact that you're hiring incompetent people, and instead of spending a little more money to get people who, and paying them a fair wage. And now this is the leftist part of me that Paul has influenced over the years. Him and my buddy Jujar, who have, but it's true, right? If you pay somebody a good wage, they're going to be happy in doing their job, right? And the problem with a lot of these systems is, people hire people that aren't the right people, right? It's not the system at the end of the day. It's the people, right? And I think companies just waste a lot of money on software.
I think a lot of them think that the hard work is pulling out the checkbook and buying something. And that's like the easiest part of the process.
Yeah, that's the easiest part.
Yeah.
And then they buy it and it sits on a shelf. Look, there is so much shelfware in this industry.
I know. Actually, this desk I'm sitting at is supported by shelfware. That's why I'm actually like the chair I'm on. I'm sitting on piles of shelfware so I can be taller, right? So
anyways, you guys, I'll probably be in a lot of trouble after this thing, but look, I really don't care because I've always been a person to say what I mean and be fully transparent about everything, right? I don't believe in look, I'm not a marketing person. Over the years, I've told customers, like, don't buy this stuff because it's really not going to work for you at the end of the day. And I believe in that because I look and that's why I come back to Siebel, because with a pure conscience, I can say that, when I go to customers who I've known for decades, who are, and I go into a large telco, one of the largest in the world, and they still have 32 up and running live implementations of Siebel doing order management.
Jesus.
I know that, it was the right decision. Now they hate the UX, which I don't blame them because it was an ugly UX. But, I always, okay, I'm just going to say one thing and I won't Oracle, I
better post this because Esteban told me he wants me to play the disclaimer video.
This is my personal opinion. When Oracle acquired Siebel, if Oracle had just focused on streamlining Siebel, putting it in the cloud, putting a beautiful UX on it, I think the industry would look very different than it does today. I think Oracle made a huge mistake in the fact that they didn't take this rich product they had, figure out how to modularize it in a better way, put it in the cloud, and really put a beautiful UX on it. And I think if they had done that, I think it would be a very different. I think we would see a very different, sort of mixture of companies in this space and who actually owns the lion's share of market share in the space, right? I'm a firm believer. Look, I think people always ask me, why did you leave Siebel and go to SAP? Why did you leave SAP and go to Microsoft? Why did you go to Salesforce? Look, I just believe that I think there has to be fair competition for customers' sakes at the end of the day. I actually don't like the fact that there's dominant players who capture, majority share of the market at the end of the day. Because I do believe that leads to people not innovating and building better and better products. And I think when you have, this open competitive system where you have a lot of players who are, doing different things, it just makes it, look, it forces companies to innovate and think. But when you become a dominant player, you sometimes lose your ability, right, to really innovate and think differently at the end of the day. And by the way, it gets harder when you become that dominant player. Yep. It gets harder for you to throw that away and say, now I'm going to build the next generation, right? And, even at Siebel, we went through that, right? We were in the process when, to build sort of the next generation of CRM. But the problem was we couldn't get rid of the old paradigms that were so, and look, I was just as guilty, near and dear to your heart, right? And I do think that companies in this space, everybody's got old product. Mm-hmm. And you can't ask the same people who built that product to build the next generation. You have to bring in a new generation of people to build those products. Otherwise, you get a better looking form of what you had before.
You know what that means, Bob? Given that we need a new generation, time for you and I to head to the Maldives.
That's what I keep saying.
I guess I'll let you guys go. Later.
Let those guys build it.
And on that interesting note, man, this has been a great hour. Actually, a little bit more than an hour. It's been fascinating. Bob is the first one to drop a couple of F-bombs on the show. That's great. You've got Esteban asking for other people to use disclaimers. That's a first. I don't know where we can go from here, Paul, because this has been one of the greatest shows we've ever done.
Are you willing? Well, one last question then. Are you willing to come back?
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, then.
For the longest time, I don't like public speaking. I don't like, I'm not one of those people that likes the limelight. I prefer to sit in the back room and just build shit.
Too much fun.
Yeah, you guys are fun, right?
So you and I will work on the details for the next appearance and the vacation.
Perfect.
In this Maldives thing, which you will never tell me what it's about.
No, look, we'll tell you. It's really simple. When Paul and I finally decide to retire,
we coincidentally, by the way, retiring literally around the same time.
Same time. We have agreed to go take off, maybe a month, maybe a little more, and go to the Maldives and just hang out and have fun.
That's it. Simple as that.
That's kind of like
that brocade
movie American Pie, where the teenagers
That's
Go
right.
out, go crazy.
Man, that's all.
So
it is.
you guys like reversing it. You can retire and then go crazy at the Maldives.
Exactly.
It's cool.
You got it.
Yeah, you might need to have a third person just to keep you guys in order, so I'm just saying, put that out there. Hey, this has been awesome. Thanks so much for the time. I know it's late where you are, and we just appreciate you having this kind of conversation on our show. So it's great.
No problem. Anytime, I'm happy to.
Don't worry, there will definitely be a next. So,
All right.
Absolutely.
all right.
All right.
Thanks,
With
guys.
that in mind, thank you. And hey, I'm Brent Leary.
I'm Paul Greenberg.
We're the CRM Players. We'll see you tomorrow where we'll be talking sports. Maybe not Buffalo, but we'll be talking sports. Take care.